In a world with entirely too many shows about cars, this is another pointless automotive podcast.
It's a fun kind of era.
Yeah, let's call that an intro. Let's do that. In case you couldn't tell, guys, first off,
3, 2, 1.
In stereo, it's Miller time.
So we are pouring one out today for classic muscle cars, and I thought this was a fun thing to do because we mostly traffic in 80s, 90s, early 2000s vehicles. Probably because it's more of a price point, but you know, which one's first, chicken or the egg?
That's changing.
It is.
That is changing. Maybe we'll talk about that.
We probably will. But muscle cars, man, we're talking 60s. Some will argue late 50s is when the muscle car
realistically, you know, I mean that's a debatable thing, right? Like what constitutes a muscle car? When is it? Is it like the 409, Chevy, like Impala 409, or is it the GTO?
Or something was the first official. I don't know the science behind it, but we're gonna definitely say 60s, early 70s. 70s definitely.
Can I try something in real time? I'm gonna answer my phone live on the air because this number has called me now twice. I don't know what they want. Hello. Hey. Hello. It's ready. Okay, perfect. I'll be there probably later on this afternoon. I will see you then. Thanks, Martine. Bye-bye. Oh boy, there might be some continuity errors here if we decide to leave.
We'll probably edit
this
that
episode in. This portion. If we do want to leave it in, that was the O2 sensor on the Galant. It is done. They got it done. It's been replaced. We're ready to roll.
Awesome.
So,
and if we don't choose to keep it, back to where we were.
Exactly. Anywho. Hold on. One more thing. Now, one more thing we get to choose if we keep it or not.
So yeah, the classic muscle cars, 60s, 70s saw the death of them for sure. But the thing I want to bring up,
an aggressive dip in the 70s. I mean, there's some exceptions.
Where was the price boom for muscle cars? Early 2000s, right? Saw the most insane prices going.
Barrett Jackson
numbers matching, original
Copo Camaro, and yeah.
So the thing is, and Frank's definitely more into muscle cars than me.
I own one. Although you are at late stage. I dare not call it. A muscle car.
It's definitely sports
the
car.
CR one.
Yeah,
But yeah, I would say I'm more versed in the world of muscle car. I don't traffic in it nearly as much as I once did. I own several.
And that's the real reason, right? So muscle cars definitely peaked in the 2000s. The first note I made is the generation that idolized these cars, because we always idolized the cars when we were growing up that we couldn't drive, whether we were too young or couldn't afford. Couldn't afford them. So unfortunately, those folks are dying off. That's how the world works. So the hype surrounding their prices and their values has certainly followed that same curve of the amount of those people still alive. So I think another thing is the fear of electrification has kind of made them almost rebellious nowadays. Resto modding has come back.
Well, I mean, even and look at probably if you were to pick a modern day standard bearer of trying to keep the muscle car tradition alive, that would be like modern Dodge.
Modern Dodge, yeah.
And that's their thing. Is they're like rebel,
the Magnum SRT8.
That's what they do. It's just like you don't want that. You want to do. Yeah. You want this.
They still make them. They do still
make them for now. Although they're doing like the electric Challenger and stuff.
Which is still going to be a muscle electric car.
It is, but isn't it crazy? Didn't they say you can play engine sounds on the outside of some
selectable
notes, like 130 decibels or something, just felonious level of noise. But that's part of the whole muscle car experience, right?
And we're gonna play it loose too. We're gonna shoot from the hip on this episode.
Let's just do it because my notes are predictably terrible.
Yes.
And I do have some personal history and some with muscle cars, stuff I've owned and stuff I've played around with and stuff I've just admired more so than I know you have. But what catches your eye? What's the cut of your jib?
Yes.
When it comes to muscle car and stuff.
So I mean, there's the classic stuff. We could talk about Chevelle Super Sport 454s. We could talk about this Camaro Z28 from the late 60s, which I think are always going to be timeless cars. They just iconic coupe designs. very swooping, very, very awesome.
I mean, the Z28 was effectively a homologation special, right?
It was really built for speed.
Yeah.
It wasn't built just to look fast and go down
that's what's
avenue.
And that's what's cool about that era of stuff is, I mean, there's a lot to not like about cars of that era, specifically American cars of that era.
Right.
But what is, and you mentioned it about like the rebellious attitude, and there's a certain amount of that. I mean, shoot, there was the AMC Rebel, for Christ's sake. But you had an attitude of win on Sunday, sell on Monday.
That's how it goes.
And so you had these like pseudo skunk work projects that all of these manufacturers were doing, even within their own like divisions, where you had like Pontiac was doing their stuff with the GTO, and then you had Chevy doing their stuff, and you had Oldsmobile and all these derivatives that like modern, if now if that was happening, you have Stellantis would be like trying to cannibalize their own lineup for things. You know, there's only one Camaro and there's plenty of GM brands. There's no spin-offs of it. But what's interesting is you had seemingly every year in the 60s, you would have a new performance model of whether it was the whole reason that the first gen Charger, the 66 Charger exists, was because of NASCAR. They said, hey, we're racing a Coronet. How can we make it more aerodynamic? I don't know, we'll give it a fastback. And that's a weird looking car. I love that car. Those early Chargers are super cool looking. They're super cool, they're super weird. They're kind of ugly, but really cool.
That's what makes them cool, yeah.
And then you had the next Charger, and then you not talking Superbird and all that. NHRA specials where like you go and you buy a car and they don't even give you a VIN number.
Right.
They give you like a serial number because they don't want you to register it to run it.
Yeah, there's some that came with like little placards in the glove box that said not intended for road use, you know?
Exactly.
That's how wild is that you could buy that at a dealership, you know, back in the day.
Yeah.
Engine options too, my man. Like you could go like you got a 67, in 68 it added 80 horsepower because they went up to this different big block, right?
Exactly. And then in 69, like you can get the three deuce option or whatever the new carburation, or if you go like really crazy, you can get like, you know, in GM land you get like mechanical fuel injection and disc brake stuff when that was kind of cutting edge and so
like a Nissan 370Z wouldn't last back then. I feel like 9 years or 12 years or however long.
Yeah, the Frontier.
It just didn't happen. They changed. It was innovation after innovation. And we're talking big gaps between years, dude. We're talking like horsepower numbers like, and then all of a sudden getting halved.
Oh, I know. Yeah, there's that whole thing.
We're going to have to talk about that.
73. Ooh. You know, it's just, it's kind of wild because you think about, you know, you just said it, like the 370Z ran its course for, let's just call it a decade to make math easy.
Yep.
And then you look at what came out in say 1964 versus 1974.
Worlds apart.
Wild difference. You went from one of the most absolute show-stopping era as far as styling and design and performance-oriented and power, a horsepower race to 1974, which is the start of the absolute darkest time for the automobile.
All the way to the early 80s, yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, and that would have been, and that's one refresh cycle of say the 370s.
Right.
And so it's interesting, like all these different parts in time and the stuff that was produced during that time, and the stuff that would, you know, quote unquote manufacturers got away with, which is, you know, they were just playing by the rules at the time, but you couldn't do any of that stuff now.
No. But pre-emissions, pre-safety equipment for the most part.
Pedestrian collision standards, rollover.
They should have heard me
standards.
Yes. Why are they in the road?
Exactly. So yeah, right. So what are some of your favorite stuff from that era? Because I have lots, and my stuff is I mostly skew Mopar, but there's a lot of stuff that I really like from the era of all manufacturers.
I picked some weird Mopar because I've always been weird. I've always had a thing in my heart for the Plymouth Dusters.
Yeah,
I really like their design, and
I've
it
always
was
wanted a
a smaller
Duster
car. So
Yep.
the big draw for a lot of those muscle cars, where the big drawback was the weight. associated with these cars were massive. A lot of these vehicles, like you don't understand how big a GTO is until you park it next to like a normal like Corolla.
Yeah,
like it's a long.
And a GTO is an intermediate.
Yeah,
that was
right.
not a full size car.
Exactly.
You know, GTOs, Chevelles, Belvederes, Roadrunners, all that stuff are not even full size. Those are intermediates.
Right, and the Duster usually got a pretty pedestrian, if you will, engine option, and I think the 340 was probably the best option that vehicle came with.
Yeah, for sure. The 340 in my Barracuda, my 65 Barracuda, came out of a factory 340 71 Duster.
That's super cool.
That's the motor it was originally in.
That's a good motor. I think it's like 275 to 300 or something. Yeah.
So the interesting thing about the whole muscle car
era, no SAE ratings.
No SAE. It was all, well, it was SAE, not net, it was SAE gross. Right. And the amount of attention that really anyone, there were no hardcore watchdog groups like paying attention to what were the stated horsepower figures accurate.
Right.
On a lot of engines they were, on a lot of them they were notoriously inaccurate. But usually there was a lot of understating going on, right? Like, that was not an understatement. What was understated though, that motor notoriously, the 340, which was a high winding motor, I mean that had a factory imposed red line of 6,500 for 1960s push rod small block was pretty aggressive, but you can easily rev them north of 7. I have a 7,500 RPM red limiter chip in my MSD box on my engine.
Yeah.
And it wants to run up there. It's got big valves, it's got a lumpy cam, and so it's kind of similar to like a more aggressive 327. And they it's a great motor, but they were universally known as being understated because they said about 375, but it's probably more like, 275 horse, but they were kind of known as being right out of the box. They were really good for more like 295, 300.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's fully accessorized and everything, which was not how they did those.
And
the Hemis were underrated. Some of the, like, was it the 428 side oiler stuff from Ford were understated on powers. So it's interesting. But great motor.
Yeah, that's why I like it in the Duster, because the Duster was like a subtle but cool look. I still think the design looks good.
Like 3,200 pound car.
Light for that period.
Correct, for sure.
Yeah. So just, that recipe has never gotten old, putting a big horsepower engine into a smaller body.
I will say, I do like the Duster. It's stablemate, the only named this way for 2 years, because Bible Thumpers got the best of it. The Dodge Demon.
Yes, yep, the original.
Yeah, 71, 72 Demon. I prefer that styling a little better.
Yeah, the Duster was
plus
cool.
The name.
Duster's a cool name though too.
That's one thing, and this,
naming conventions.
Well,
right?
I'm going to say that, and this is coming from a Mopar honk, so take this with a grain of salt. But Mopar did such a fun job in that era of marketing brilliance.
Yeah.
Like the Demon, you had the little cartoon, innocent cartoon demon holding a pitchfork on the back. And the Duster, you had it was like a tornado with eyeballs. And you had road runners, self-sufficient, and then you had the Darts 340 Swinger, which
we know what that
connotation. It's and just so, and then the high impact colors, right? You had like Panther Pink. And plum crazy and sublime green and Hemi orange. You had
gorgeous
just the job that they did in that era. I think was second to none as far on the marketing front. And I think each manufacturer was probably uniquely good at their own thing.
Yeah.
But I think marketing and naming conventions and stuff like that. I mean the horn
sounding just like the Roadrunner for the cartoons. Yeah. Little touches.
Little stuff like that was really cool, and we don't have, model Plaid aside, like you don't really have fun stuff like that anymore.
Remember when Honda had their door chime was the beep, 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 beep. You know what that is, right?
No, I don't.
Morse code for the letter H.
Oh,
how freaking sweet is that? And they don't have it anymore. But I thought that was such a cool thing.
Any 80s and 90s Honda.
Yep. Little fun trivia for you there.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, I love fun little Easter egg stuff
that's
like that.
That's a good one. Yeah, classic. But yeah, that's probably one of my favorite Mopar vehicles, and that was I think those came out the late 60s, early 70s, so it was kind of like the final shout.
70 was the first year of the Duster.
So yeah,
70, then they made it till 76. Although, just like anything in the era, it got its jump stomped on in 73, 74.
A cool little final shout out, though. I like that car. I definitely rock one of those.
Most of them were the 318 V8 and the 225 slant 6, which are
340
bomb-proof motors. Those might be the two most singly reliable motors in any car in that era.
Those are great motors.
Now the rest of the car, who knows?
Well, rust, but...
Rust, electrical issues on the Chrysler stuff of that era.
Well, they never got rid of that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a time-honored tradition. And I would say if gun to my head, probably my favorite of any muscle car of that era, or any 60s, really 60s car. It's probably the second generation Barracuda, which my first car is a 65. That's the first gen.
First gen, yeah.
That 67 to 69.
Gorgeous car.
Barracuda. Yeah, it was stylistically, it went in a far different direction than the Mustang and Camaros, because it had the Mustang and Camaros in the 60s were all, long front end, short deck, that traditional look how big my Johnson is look.
Big coupe look, yeah.
And the Barracuda took a little bit of a different approach. It had a little bit of a longer trunk lid. It had a little bit of a shorter front end. It was a more quote-unquote European balanced look. And you can get them with great motors.
You can get them in cool colors too, right? You still
Get them in good colors.
Plum crazy and everything. Cause that's what
in 69 you could. In 68 the colors weren't as crazy. It's when you got to 70 on that the colors really got hairy. But like 69 you can get something that they call the mod package, MOD. And so you had the mod top, which was a floral pattern vinyl roof, or the mod interior, which was also a floral pattern, like olive green and like gold pattern seat vinyl interior.
Could you option that with like a big 440 or something stupid?
Yeah,
okay, that's
almost
lovely.
all of them were fairly base. They were
that makes sense.
it was like the typical like quote unquote hairdresser's car. But yeah, you can go. I don't know if you could do. I don't know production numbers enough to know like if they did. But yeah, you could have gone 440 big block, 4-speed, the mod interior. So dope. With the mod top, but they did some really cool stuff, and they actually, for what they were in the era, they were pretty well balanced. It was that same A body that the Duster was built on, the same platform. So you had a torsion bar front suspension that actually handled pretty well. The Formula S package, you got big sway bars front and rear. You got disc brakes. With a 340, with the big block stuff, they didn't handle crap. They were way too nose heavy.
Yeah, super heavy.
With a 340 or a 273. They made decent power. They were well balanced, and just really cool. Probably my favorite of anything in the era from Americana.
Do you think it looks better than the GTX? Though I think the GTX is probably Mopar's best looking.
I'm a big fan of the early GTX, so the 66, 67.
Yep.
With the hood scoop, and I own a couple of that generation Belvedere, which is what that car is based off.
Is a version.
The Belvedere was the base model, and then you had the Satellite, which was the middle run, and then you had the GTX, which it was always called it was the gentleman's muscle car,
right?
Because it had the fully appointed, nicer interior and all the little niceties, the Magnum 500 wheels, the kind of dual hood scoop.
You can get a sweet like 440 dropped in there.
Yeah, with that pillarless hardtop. I also really like those cars. I've had a couple of them, and yeah, it's just a good looking car.
I think it's up there for me.
And that's why you have these cars is to do burnouts and look really cool and make good noises. The aforementioned from last episode, getting ready for like a road rally driving event. Unless you're doing like the power tour or something like that.
I'd take a Camaro Z28.
Yeah, but even then, like, those seats that era of American car seat is not fun to be tossing yourself around in for 12 hours a day.
Right. Well, that's living in the period though, right? Like if you want to really, but resto modding.
You should also then drop acid.
Oh yeah.
And listen to some Jefferson
Airplane.
Yeah.
We're
not
Starship.
Starship.
No,
not Starship.
Yeah.
I will die on this. We built this city is the single worst song in the history of rock and roll.
I don't think they used rock and roll to build that city. Did they?
Yeah,
I used to have that on 45 back in the day. That's a small record. For
I'm sorry. Oh, I know. My kid, that's all he listens to is weird stuff on vinyl.
It's so fun, yeah.
It's problematic.
No, the Z20. So we talked about some of them were good at handling. Like the Z28 was an honest attempt at making a handler. Like it came with disc brakes in the front, really good suspension for the time. Like everything's.
I like how that's like an accomplishment that like disc brakes. Whoa.
Well, dude, everything had drum. You know, it's
drums are great at stopping once.
Right. not
you try to do it again, and like a minute later, nope, the pedal stick goes right to the floor.
But what the Z28 never had a massive engine. It had like what, a 396 was as big as you could go on a Z28, and then it had
so the Z28 specifically was the quote unquote homologation special. So that came with a bespoke GM 302, which was
but you could option a 396 in there.
I don't think in a Z28.
I think you could.
You could in an RS or an SS, but not the Z28.
You sure?
Because Z28 was, I think, was it 68 and 69 or just 69?
68, for sure.
But it was only a 302. And you can go manual or automatic.
4-speed.
That was 4-speed. 4-speed manual, 3-speed auto. But because that was, they basically de-stroked, I think, a 327 or 350. It was de-stroked because you had to be under, 305 cubic inches for basically the Trans Am racing that they were doing at the time.
It made good power though for a smaller.
Yeah, spinning, it was de-stroked, so it was wide bore, short stroke kind of spun. The 340 was very similar. They did the Challenger TA for Trans Am,
right? Yeah,
and then they did the AAR All American Racing Barracuda, and that was the same deal, limited number. That was a 346 pack, so I think it went from 275 to 290 horse.
It's pretty good.
And kind of a special car, and that's back to because it was both, right? It's like you can get your drag race spec car in the era, or you can get your like Transamerica road race, whether it's in a Mustang or Camaro or Barracuda.
You know what's weird though?
Or
I don't take a weird color with my Z28. I take that faded blue denim kind of paint with white accents.
Yeah,
I don't know why. I just love it on that car.
That would be good. When I picture that era Z28, I immediately picture the yellow with like the black stripe. That's not how I would.
No, I go with that faded blue. I call it faded denim.
Yeah, that's a good one. You know who we haven't talked about at all yet? AMC. Oh. Before I had my Barracuda, I was actively looking for a Javelin.
Not a Gremlin?
Well, you can get it. You could get a Gremlin with a 304 and a manual.
That'd be kind of dope.
A V8 manual Gremlin. They didn't sell hardly any of them that you can get. And a Pacer. I think you can get that in a Pacer too.
How hard would that be to find today?
I'm sure they're out there. And here's the thing. Kind of back to how we started talking about all this nonsense. You know what? There's a lot of boomer homies are kicking the bucket, and so I think some of this stuff you'll see. There's whole collections being sold at auctions. Garages. There's individual cars being rescued, whether they're from like estates, posthumously sold, or the people are just aging out and they can use the money. I think depending on what the economy does or doesn't do in the next 18 months, we might see a lot of this stuff at discounted prices flooding into the market. If there's an economic downturn and people's retirement funds are turning into piles of smoldering human feces, people might have to start selling this stuff because they're of retirement age and they got to eat.
The thing is, too, the market's not going to get as hot as it was in the early 2000s. Remember when Shell?
I think that's nearly impossible.
Like, remember that? Like, you could buy like a Nova or Chevelle Super Sport Shell for like 20 to 30K. It was stupid stuff, and I'm talking like 50% rust free.
Yeah, VIN's cut off, but it's like it comes with it, like in a pouch. You're like, this seems sketchy. I don't know.
Where else are you gonna get it? You
find another one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think you're gonna start seeing that car that was bought for 30 and then restored for another 130. And Homeboy thought it would be worth 200. They're gonna be selling for the original 30 here pretty quickly, which is sort of a shame because there's some cool stuff.
Very cool.
But it might also be kind of a boom because I think that might be the only shot a lot of this stuff ends up getting saved. Because like my kid and your kid probably aren't really going to want one of those
They never
in the
saw them
future if
cruising
it's
around.
$250,000.
No.
You know, but you know, if it's the Chevelle 68 Chevelle 396 car with a manual, and it's available for $35. That's a cool, unique piece of machinery that So I think that's the hope. I think that's how some of this stuff will be sticking around, and you'll see it because prices will come down, and then they'll come out of collections and they'll start being driven.
Yeah, I kind of feel like too with everything becoming electric, like you can't get any more analog than some of these muscle cars where.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, correct. You can still get some electrical gremlins near the end runs, but
you want to feel body roll, kid?
Yeah, but it's
get in, slide across this bench seat.
Well, that's what I said too. Like, it's the visceral experience, like unburnt fuel, a horrible idle. Adjusting everything manually. Like, this ran fine last week. Let me just tune on this carburetor. And zero safety features, like pedestrian or yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like the thing that makes it cool. It's like an experience. Every time you go for a spin in one of those, it's like, even if you're going to the grocery store to pick up milk, if you got your 455 or your 454, you lay a pair of 11s
You're sitting there
down.
rumbling. Yeah, you're just sitting there rumbling at an intersection, and people are looking at you like, and at this point, and that's the thing, at one point, if it was 1998, and you're sitting there rumbling away in your 390 powered Ford Galaxy, 66 Ford Galaxy, with a Thunderbolt like teardrop hood sitting there, you probably draw a little bit of ire, right? Like some people will look at you like, ooh, look at this punk and their muscle car. But now, that's like, there's a level of charm. As long as you're not sitting there like constantly revving it and doing stupid stuff. If you're just sitting there idling away in a muscle car, modified or not, like it's endearing.
I agree.
And so
you don't see as many out.
You don't.
Getting trailered to good guy shows is basically where you see them.
Getting trailered to a good guy show with like billet everything.
Oh boy.
And the creepy nightmare doll like leaning up crying on the fender.
I love it.
Nothing. There are very like I'm very much in the school of thought of like I'm pretty good at putting myself in other people's shoes and trying to like, okay, I don't get it and I don't agree, but I understand where you're coming from. And all kinds of things, whether it be politically or like weird shit that people are into that I'm not into, but like, okay, like maybe I sort of understand where you're coming from. That is one of the few things in this world I will truly not understand is the creepy, weird doll leaning on car thing at your local old hat muscle car show. It hurts my brain to conceptualize not only that someone came up with that to be in existence, but then that they were able to monetize it and sell them, and other lost-minded people were like, that is, not only do I like that, I'm going to give you money in exchange for one of those, and then set it up at a car show. I don't.
Can I present you with an idea? We go to like a Radwood or something. We take something period correct 80s or 90s, but we bring the creepy dolls and just do it and try to pull it off.
Here's what I would do though. I would like embed like a motion active, like one of those trail cams, just so it can sit there and like anytime somebody walks by it and looks like, what the fuck? And so it'll just like record people's reaction to this colossally stupid waste. It's just so
Let's bring it back, Frank. Let's turn your fear into a love.
I can't.
You need to open your heart.
Like I'm not into feet. I'm not foot fetish guy.
You started off with that one. You put your best foot forward.
We gotta get off on the right foot, or the left foot.
Yeah, just put your toes in the water.
But like even that like almost makes more sense than like the weird creepy doll. Creepy dolls aside.
Bring them back, then.
I can't. It's a really intriguing era because there was a certain amount of Wild West to it.
Yeah,
and that is very much missing now. Tropes aside, as far as like V8s and burnouts and stuff, I think that if there was a certain rebelliousness and a certain, as I said, Wild Westness to it. What's probably the closest analog of that today, besides just going like Challenger because it has a V8?
Yeah, like the modern muscle comeback. Remember the retro muscle? Where was that? Probably 2004 4 or 5-ish when we had that modern, like resto looking kind of retro.
Yeah, the Mustang.
Camaro.
Mustang showed up.
Camaro,
The Mustang or the Camaro come back a
Challenger
years later.
In 07,
Yeah,
06.
I thought it was 08, I think.
No, I
was
think
when
it's
the
early.
Challenger came out.
Is it? They had that concept out in like 06, I think.
Yeah.
And it stayed pretty close to the concept, which was cool.
You know what held on to kind of bridge the gap? Was
Prowler?
I would say the Viper. Because the Viper was there the whole time. The Prowler and like the PT Cruiser were like the half-baked like entry level into that.
The Thunderbird.
The retro, not even retro futurism, but just like retro design.
Thunderbird was low.
The Thunderbird, the HHR, the SSR. SSR with a manual, you know, 6 liter.
Not that. I can't do it, dude.
Purple.
It looks like made out of Play-Doh or something.
Oh yeah, it's
Something
definitely got left in the sun,
I
but
don't know.
but like the Viper was kind of a retro throwback, kind of.
Yeah,
I mean, it
Viper
was
was
very
kind of
aggressive, so it was
like a Shelby Cobra, basically.
yeah, the modern interpretation of it. So that's
those early
but like
Vipers, just buy them now.
But like, if you were like, what's like the true like the rebellious new car choice? Like,
You gotta say Dodge products, right? Like,
yeah, but that. All of those products have been on the market for 12 plus years, 14 years.
today? Yeah, it's hard to like the Hellcats, maybe.
Even
The
then,
Hellcats,
it's just it's an almost 15. Well, the platform is like 25 years old.
A lot of these were older platforms, like you said. The Belvedere became the GTX, right? So
Yeah, but they were kind of getting refreshed like every year. I'm trying to think like just like what's the rebellious like BRZ like we
the
kind
new
of don't
Nissan Z.
sort of. I don't know. I feel like we don't have this like
It's not like it used to be.
it isn't, and I guess that's the point, right?
Because we're looking at fuel economy and electric vehicles. What's
Sure.
your range, man? Bro, you only got a 200-mile range. I got 315. You know, those are fighting words, right? That's what you.
Maybe the Corvette.
What do you do? Pull
The C8?
How do you shit talk with that? You pull it to the light. You're like, how's your range anxiety, buddy? You're like,
I need to plug in, man. I need to plug in fast.
Exactly. I don't know. It's just interesting. It's a bygone era, and I mean, forever like the trope was like they don't make them like they used to, but I mean, they don't make them like they used to.
They do not.
And in a lot of ways, it's better. Like I get it. Like you know, they don't. Generally speaking, especially compared to something modern, like the fit and finish is garbage. They didn't hold up. They can't road handle. The brakes were trash. Like they're good on the freeway, but then they're not good on the freeway because they don't have overdrive. And like I understand why something like that ZR1 over there, or something like this Miata over here, or something like the Galant are far more approachable to actually drive around. Like it's not carbureted. It has electronic ignition.
Although carburation fans will say that electronic ignition is the devil and the worst thing to deal with. Especially early stuff. Like you go back to some of the early Mercedes stuff. Or how about the Crossfire and some of the C4?
Yeah, I mean there's some of that.
Some gross stuff in there.
You know, especially once you get to, you know, away from like Bosch CIS and K-Jectronic and stuff, you start getting to more modern stuff.
Right.
It's just so much easier to live with. It doesn't smell. The emissions, it's catalyzed. Like your eyes don't water when
emissions
start
killed it, right?
Cold started.
Like emissions kill performance. The gas crisis definitely put the nail in the coffin. It's just back then you could just do whatever you can to make an engine output, right? That was the goal.
Yeah, I mean that's what
Fuel
it was.
economy, who cares? Gas is so cheap, so readily available.
Do you think? So right now we're kind of taking the stance of, and I think it's an accurate one. It's like as it is right now, the muscle car is, and the appreciation for them, generally speaking, is kind of dying off. It's going by the wayside.
It's been dead for a little while. Actually.
It's been, it has been. It got a little bit of a bump, like mid-COVID, along with everything else in the world.
True.
But do you think there's any hope of a resurgence? Do you think there's going to be a little bit of a comeback special?
I think so. Like at the onset of this episode,
It's a comeback, not on.
Yeah, come on, it's back.
Yeah. Or hers.
I think it'll come
It's up to
because
you.
the fear of electrification, right? I think
Yeah.
everything going in that direction, you can't get more like opposed to that, than a
Get
muscle
people
car.
looking. That would be interesting if that's how that's how it makes a resurgence. Is we're in an EV world. And I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. Is I think gasoline powered stuff is going to go the way of like straight up horse, where
I don't think so.
you're gonna have Like, when cars became prevalent, like cars now, like, it's not that people stopped riding horses to get to work. They took a car or a train or whatever, or the bus. They didn't ride their horse to work. But horses aren't extinct. People still own horses. People still ride horses, but it's only recreationally.
Horse enthusiasts.
And maybe they're doing it. Yeah, horse.
I won't leave it at that.
Be wary of horse girl, because horse girl's got some tricks up her sleeve.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But the
riding dirty.
That's right. Don't Google 2 guys, 1 horse. Just don't do it. But the thing with but horses are still around, and people still enjoy them, and people might drive their car to work, and then on a weekend go ride around the countryside in a horse and do dressage, and eventing and all this stuff. Maybe that's where the muscle car will make a resurgence. Is like, it's expensive to go buy a horse and have a horse and keep a horse, and it might be expensive to go buy a muscle car and appreciate a muscle car. But they will continue to be saved, and maybe that will be the play. Is people take the EV around all day, in and out, go to work, go to church, go to whatever, and then they take the muscle car out and they ride their horse.
I've said it before. I don't think
that's not even a Mustang reference.
Yeah, no, it was good though. It was a good Mustang reference.
Yeah.
I don't think the EV apocalypse is going to happen like we think. GM just announced that they're keeping their regular vehicles.
Sure.
So I don't think it's going to happen. We're not going to have the infrastructure. We've already talked about that. It's obvious. But I do think muscle cars might make a little comeback, because just like everything old becomes new again, I think we're seeing the second wave of people, and we're talking folks because we weren't alive when muscle cars were out and about.
No,
they weren't new, right? They were like cool because like, whoa, someone's kept that thing alive.
And they made noises, and some of them, when I paid $3,500 for my Barracuda when I bought it in 2000.
Right. But you can't do that.
And that was like, it was like the unwanted model of Barracuda. Now a shell I'd get double that, but it was kind of like the 370s. I'm keeping a theme going on with this one. No, they're staying in. Let it rip. The 350Z was like cheap, like the cheap car that the high school kid can get and have fun with, and now it's or the 240 SX.
Oh yeah.
And now you can't, because it's like they've appreciated because they were the cheap thing, and now everyone was buying them up.
Desirable.
And that's kind of how muscle cars were for a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I think there could be a resurgence. I think they deserve a resurgence, because I'd like to see them on the road.
Fun to restore, simple mechanically compared to modern cars. When you start getting into the 80s and 90s cars,
engine days.
Yeah, you're not dealing with a lot of sensors, vacuum ECUs.
Yeah, especially like anything Chevy 350 powered.
Yep.
I don't care where you are on the globe, your local part place has every single part of that car in stock on the shelf for not any dollars.
And they're truly timeless cars because there's no tech to fail. I do like resto mods for like handling components. I think suspensions have come a long way. I think tire technology. Yes, braking has come a very long way, because you got 4-wheel drums on one of these heavy cars.
Yeah,
you don't know.
And some of them
stopping.
too. Some of them they have, there's like kits where you can just retrofit later OEM stuff to your muscle car,
which is awesome.
It's like a caliper adapter bracket and like a different spindle and a proportioning valve, and now you can run 4-wheel disc brakes front and rear out of a who knows.
Which is a game changer in drivability.
Yeah,
like a big difference than getting that soft pedal after a couple hard brakes.
Yeah,
scary
especially if you're going to be doing any really spirited driving. I think most of these cars at this point are relegated to cruising around, which is great. I would still like to get another muscle car cruiser at some point. I would one once the Barracuda's finished up.
Yeah.
But something like a Chrysler Imperial convertible or something humongous. Drop top, just float to wherever you want to go. Just float it there, float it back.
Although we went to that good guy, seeing these guys mob on Resto Modded Classics is freaking. That looks so fun.
Yeah,
looks so fun.
Yeah, and you can do it right. It takes some time and energy, but if you want to spend
a bit of coin too,
a bit of coin and a bit of time and labor, you can do it, and I think it's rewarding to do. I think it's good.
But I thought we had to recognize that, because the light has definitely not been shown on muscle cars for a little while. And honestly,
and we're not it's not like we're above that. We're a year plus into this podcast, and it's really the first time we've spent any appreciable time discussing and talking about muscle cars, and probably to our great shame, because I think they're worth talking about, and they're worth keeping on the road, and they're worth getting out and driving on the road, because I'm hoping that's kind of where we end up, which is simply put, that they get out of collections and they get onto the road and driven and into the ether.
Yeah, and with the prices, without that spotlight on them, you can actually scope them and find decent ones.
Can.
And you should totally. I would love to add a classic muscle car to my fleet, and just, if anything else, to not have to do, timing belt jobs or do ECU swaps or do all this stupid sensor changing and do regular
small
maintenance.
Compliance and setting monitors and on and on and on. And,
just for that relief.
It just looks so damn good.
There's nice.
Almost everything in that era has aged incredibly well.
So good. Yeah.
Very few notable exceptions. So, I don't know. Go buy yourself a muscle car.
Yeah. So we don't talk about them enough, and we thought they deserved at least an episode from us. We'll probably come back.
We should come back. Yeah. Once certainly once my Barracuda is sorted out and back on the road, which is a very long time coming. Then we'll definitely have to do some fun things, and speaking of fun things,
potentially fun,
sir. Yeah, potentially fun, potentially heartbreaking. I don't know. I would like to play a little game.
Yes. So this is our automotive print ad quiz game. While Frank pulls up the ad to torment me with, we have a little game where we go over publications featuring vehicle ads, sales ads from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. This is where we limit ourselves. One player gets to read the ad to the other. The other player, the contestant in the scenario, has 3 guesses to arrive at what car. In this case, I'll be guessing what Frank's trying to allude to without giving it away.
Mm-hmm.
I can ask for hints along the way, but I have 10 minutes. Let me get the clock queued up.
The old clock, the old stopwatch.
Yeah, there's no stopping time. So I'll start that as soon as he reads the ad. But Frank, go ahead and start that ad, and
Okay.
let's see what we got.
So I have an interesting one here today. Oh boy. It is a single page ad. There is a photo of the car, like the top 1/4.
Okay.
And then it has a little bit of script. And then under that, in the right about bottom quarter, it has a cutaway illustration of the vehicle with a bunch of, so you can see all the drivetrain components and this and that, and it has little arrows pointing to each little component, and it tells you what it is.
A little infographic.
Exactly. And then at the bottom, it has some scripting.
Okay.
So up at the top between the two photos, it says, to find out what separates the blank from other luxury cars, you have to get inside it.
Okay.
Inside the blank, you'll find more than just leather trimmed seats, power windows, and a high-end stereo system. You'll find a level of automotive engineering that exceeds that of many cars in its class. Consider, for instance, Blank's unique multi-link independent rear suspension. Unlike conventional systems, multi-link allows each wheel to react individually to varying road conditions. The result is an exceptionally smooth ride coupled with precise handling. Also consider the Blank's choice of power plants. You can have a highly responsive overhead cam V6 or an intercooled turbocharged 4 that can rocket the Blank from 0 to 55 miles per hour in less time it takes many so-called performance sedans. But even more important than that 0 to 55 is the time it takes to go from 55 to 0. Which is why the Blank comes with a state-of-the-art anti-lock braking system, ABS. With ABS, you could practically stand on the brake pedal with little chance of skidding or losing control, even on wet surfaces. For additional safety, the Blank is equipped with a driver's side supplemental restraint system, SRS, And, of course, it is replete with all the safety features blank has long been famous for. All of which goes to prove that if you're in the market for a luxury car, you should look into the blank. After all, no other car in its class has such an impressive interior. Blank. A car you can believe in. I suppose I should probably read all the little thingies
Yes,
that the
please.
arrows are pointing at.
Yes.
Multi-link independent rear suspension.
Mm-hmm.
And it points at the quarter panel. And it says crumple zone. It then points at the steering wheel. Driver's side supplemental restraint. Collapsible steering column. ABS wheel speed sensor.
Oh.
Light alloy overhead cam V6. Points at the fender. Crumple zone. ABS hydraulic unit. And then it points at like the A-pillar and says safety cage.
Let me start the timer.
Sir, what vehicle are we describing here?
This is tricky, man. So overhead cam V6, but it sounded like the Turbo 4 was the better option.
That's kind of how they build it.
Yeah, right.
They call it a that's a highly responsive overhead cam V6 or integral turbocharged 4 that can rocket the blank from 0 to 55 in less time. So it definitely seems like the Turbo is the premium.
Yeah, didn't it seem like that? So displacement wasn't given for
No.
either engine,
No.
which is interesting. ABS, SRS started, I think the late 80s was the very first appearance of those things. And SRS was on
mid
cars.
80s you had some earlier stuff. ABS you had some earlier stuff, but
really,
this was cutting edge. This was still cutting edge.
And SRS was used by everybody. I think it was still on GM cars in the late 90s on the steering wheel. Still.
Yeah, like the call outs and stuff.
Yeah, so that doesn't help me too
I
much.
love the ABS like decklit call outs on like, oh, I love it. Celebrity.
There was one on the S10 Blazer.
Yeah,
out
buddy.
there. I took a picture.
The
of
red
it.
with the black outline.
So bad. And then 4-wheel drive, like it's not as important.
No.
Boy, dude, this is tricky. So got a V.
There's a lot of little bits and pieces in there now. It's tricky, but there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle.
A turbo engine. I don't think it's an actual luxury vehicle though, because the way they talk about luxury, like I don't feel like
Leather trim seats, power windows, high-end stereo system.
I don't know. I mean, maybe, but who is running turbos and V6 options? That's what's kind of bugging me a little bit there. Maybe. No. There were some weird cars. I thought Dodge for a second, but they wouldn't tote luxury, I don't think, in their vehicles. Because Dodge did run, like in their Daytonas and stuff, they did have a V6 later, like the ES came with a V6, and then they had the 2.2 liter turbo, which was the power plant to have. This is tricky, man. And I thought about European, and I can't think of too many turbo Euros from the time. Because I think everything at that time was like 16 valve, dual overhead cam, regular 4-bangers. And like the Volkswagen stuff. Japan did a lot of turbos, but I don't know about luxury. This is tricky stuff. What had a turbo 4 and also a V6 option? Man, this is tough.
After all, no other car in its class has such an impressive interior.
I kind of feel like that's not true. I feel like a lot of that, like,
you see all those arrows pointing at things in this cross
crumple zone. I like crumple zone.
It's on here twice, actually.
I know, you're a crumply car. And you know, it makes you kind of think like a Swedish car, but no way. This is not written like a Saab or Volvo ad. Or is it? Oh damn, is it? No, it's not. Saab didn't have a V6 option back then. Everything was turbo or non-turbo. 4-cylinder.
Yeah, when did you get a V6 and a Saab?
Later they put the 2.8 turbos in.
Correct, but that was like 99?
Yeah,
Maybe
late
later.
90s. Yeah. Geez, man. Feel like I'm missing something here. Well, let's just take a shot. Let's just go to get something rolling. I'll go Dodge Daytona.
It is not the Dodge Daytona. I do believe at one point it said, hold on, let's see. The The turbocharged 4 can rocket the blank from 0 to 55 in less time than it takes many so-called performance sedans.
Oh, so maybe another sedan reference to it.
I'm thinking if it's trying to pit itself against sedans, it itself
God,
perhaps is a sedan.
Am I right that is it domestic?
I will give you this hint. It is not domestic.
So we are probably talking. God, I know I'm missing something here. V6 option or 4-cylinder turbo. Is it gonna be European though? I don't think BMW now. I mean, they have the 2002, but that's gonna be before this. Volkswagen, I don't think was running turbo. They didn't run turbos or anything. They had like the 16 valve Scirocco's. They had the
Right.
GTI. That was just 16 valve 4-cylinder. Mercedes, maybe.
I don't think Mercedes made a turbocharged production vehicle until
The compressor.
and even that's supercharged still after that.
That's true. Didn't they? No, they didn't have any early turbos.
Unless it's diesel, but I don't.
No to V6 for Porsche. It's V6, correct? Am I right in saying that?
A highly responsive overhead cam V6.
Good.
Or an intercooled turbocharged 4.
We're in Japan then. We're in Japan. Ooh, okay. It didn't say front wheel drive or rear wheel drive.
It does not say that, no.
Oh boy, this is tough. How about, let's just take a shot. Let's take a shot
Okay.
here.
Okay.
Mazda? I want to say 626 or MX6. That's a tough one. 626?
It is not the Mazda 626.
Okay.
I don't think. I think
They
when
do
you
like-
can get a turbo, it was an NA4 or a turbo 4, and when you can get a V6, there was no turbo. I think. I'm not really up on my 626 lore,
Okay.
but it is not the Mazda 626.
Okay.
It is not from a Japanese
Oh god.
manufacturer.
Dude, I'm stumped. So V6 or Turbo 4. What am I missing? Something obvious.
Can I give you one more hint?
Please do, because I'm floundering.
It is a rear drive vehicle. This is rear wheel drive.
European. And it's sold in the US.
Yes.
Oh my god. I'm like, did he come in with an XR4 Ti? But this only came with the. So technically, that's a domestic too, even though it was built in Germany.
Correct.
That's a tricky one when you say stuff like that.
I will also continue to hone in on the sedan component.
Yes. Jeez, man. Rear-wheel drive sedan. Turbo 4 or V6 engine option. No rear-wheel drive, you said.
Rear drive.
I'm definitely missing something obvious here.
You have said the manufacturer already.
It's not Mercedes-Benz. BMW?
I don't know.
It can't be a 2002, can it? Those are 2 doors only.
You can get a sedan, not turbocharged.
Not turbo though. Well,
Or
I don't know if
V-
the
or
average is
V6.
tricky like that.
Or V6.
Or V6. It can't be Porsche. No way. Well, yeah, I could. I forget about the. I forget about the other car, the front engine Porsches from the period. Oh boy.
I don't think Porsche ever made it.
They never did a V6.
Right.
What? No. Never.
Well, like a Cayenne.
V8. Yeah, well, yeah, not counting the modern stuff. And they did V8s with the 928.
1 minute 30 seconds remaining.
I know, dude.
1 minute 30 seconds.
Can't be Porsche. Is it Volkswagen? Could it be Volkswagen?
I said rear wheel drive.
Bro.
Once we get to the 1 minute mark, I will give you one final hint, and then you have a minute to sluss it out.
So I'm thinking, It's not Swedish, is it? It can't be Swedish. That's what my hint's going to be. But I think it's going to be a BMW for some reason. And we're at 1 minute now.
I've owned one of these cars. Recently.
You don't still own it.
I don't still own it.
Frank, you've owned 100 cars.
This is true.
Boy.
Did you get a Grindr notification?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's Facebook Messenger, by the way.
Okay.
Also Grindr.
About Grindr.
Grindr person on Facebook. Fuck, dude.
20-something seconds left. It is Swedish.
Can it be a... It's gonna be like a Volvo 740. Final answer with 11 seconds on the clock.
You are incredibly close. Close enough.
Is it a 240?
It's the 760.
760. Okay, it's so different.
The 760 was the fancier.
And we're
To
done.
find out what separates the Volvo 760 from other luxury cars, you have to get inside it.
I totally forgot they were rear-wheel drive.
They're rear
It
drive.
totally skipped my brain.
They're rear drive, and you get the disastrously mediocre at best, the PVR V6.
Yeah, which
that
was...
they showed the with Peugeot
Wasn't that
and
sub 100
Renault.
right around 100 horsepower or something.
I want to say it was like one.
It was like very low for a V6.
And they were pretty notoriously unreliable. It's the same motor they put in the DeLorean.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, the same V6 they put in the DeLorean. There's our ad. You can take a look at that.
Oh, that's a great ad, actually.
Yeah. And so the one thing was this, the fact you had a V6 or turbocharged intercooled 4.
That was tricky, yeah.
That it was luxury-ish. And then all the safety feature stuff. The crumple zone.
You know what it is? I went with the safety stuff, but I forgot that the
And of
Volvo came with
course,
rear-wheel
it
drive.
is replete with all the safety features Volvo has long been famous for.
You know what it was though, Frank? It's because like most of the Swedish stuff was notoriously famous, well, kind of not famous,
Infamous.
for front-wheel drive becoming more mainstream. Like Saab really...
But then later, like the late '90s to mid 2000s Volvo stuff. We have
Volvo
like the
jumped in
Z70
front-wheel drive.
and the 850. But before that, Volvo was rear-wheel drive.
Rear-wheel drive.
turbocharged.
But they followed Saab, and for some reason I was blocking out the earlier Volvo. You know?
Yep. And I just have a couple weeks ago sold my 760 GLE turbo.
That's right.
For a reasonable profit. Did I tell you that the kid that like there was this girl and like her boyfriend that came to drive it, came to check it out and everything.
And they were pumped?
She just looked around and was like, okay, here you go, and handed me $5,000 in cash. And I'm like, do you want to drive it? She's like, no. She's like, okay, here you go.
They must have looked at some really shitty ones before.
I guess, yeah. And I mean, it was actually very stout.
The interior
It's
was
an
super
excellent
clean too,
car.
right?
I got headliner redone, all the things. So,
that's awesome.
good car though, good driving car.
Great car. Yeah, they're cool. The turbo definitely works out. I wouldn't buy a V6 powered.
Yeah,
historic Volvo.
Not really. But that's it. The Volvo 760.
Very cool.
Quite brickish.
Why don't you go ahead and lead this dance?
Oh boy. Well, I am. Oh boy. Okay. So I'm trying to remember. I remember a couple episodes ago I was talking about the Sienna.
Yes.
And prepping it for a very interesting adventure on Cars and Bids. I'm gearing up to run this bad boy with no reserve on Cars and Bids, which is fun because it could sell for $2,800. It could sell for $12,800.
Never
I have
know.
no idea.
Never know.
I feel like the money's probably $6,000.
I'm gonna
Probably
say
about the money.
I'm gonna say 7,400.
Ooh, okay. I would gladly take that. I
Yeah.
think 6 is about right because it does have 234,000 miles.
It's got a Toyota
The
bench.
lifted Sienna. Yeah, no, I get it. It's actually pretty mechanically tight. But, so when I was prepping, I was doing some photo work and video work, and I took it on a drive. And what I had assumed was the exhaust rattling around. I stuck my head under it. And sure enough, oh no, it's actually the rear diff mount. There's a dog bone mount that goes fore and aft, just ahead of the diff.
Okay.
And all the rubber is completely shredded out. I mean, it's 200 however many thousand miles. It's
Just
original.
dry rotted out. Yeah.
And so Toyota, they don't you can't service just the bushing. Like you buy that arm and that's the end of it. So, but with modern technology, that arm is like $400 from Toyota. It's aluminum and it's got the one bushing in it, and then that's it. I was able to find on Amazon the proper just the bushing. There's like a company that makes just the bushing.
That's awesome.
And so the same fly-by-night, I'm using that term incorrectly, or not fly-by-night, but shade tree plus mechanic that I occasionally pitch some cheapy jobs to for stuff I just either ill-equipped or don't want to deal with.
Right.
Like the O2 sensor on the Galant that's stripped out. I took it over to them, just the bushing and the arm. I'm like, I don't have a hydraulic press. Can you press out the old one and press a new one in? And they're like, sure. I'm like, what do I do? Like, give me $30. Like, okay. Hand them $30. They pressed it in. And so now I have it. And so maybe today I'll get it in the van. And then that's really the last hurdle that I need to leap over in order to get it running. So with Thanksgiving and drives and prepping the Galant and all the stuff I've been busy with, it's been on the back burner, which sucks because they've already proved, like, they're already building the listing. I just need to get off my ass and finish it up. So that's what I've been working on, is getting that done and getting that car on the market, which will be, I don't know, really interesting. I'm curious what the peanut gallery out there has to think as far as what it's going to bring.
Because there's not a lot of like comps for it, right? Like,
it literally could go for like $1,800.
It won't.
I think I'll be disappointed at anything under 5. I think 6 is the real money, and I think anything over 7 will be icing on the cake.
Yeah,
I
it's
think it's
74 for that, because it's got good tires, a notable, like, not hacked together lift job. These are all
it runs
things.
well, and it's got cold air conditioning, and it's got plenty of little faults, and the power doors don't work and stuff. But I think it'll be just really interesting to see where it ends up in today's market.
Very cool.
What have you been doing?
Well, the Forester XT behind us didn't put itself back together.
You sure?
Well, I wish it would have. So valve cover gaskets on these Subarus, super fun job.
Very easy.
Yeah, super accessible. No. At least it was the driver's side. So it had a manufacturing defect in it, which I've seen a few times in my life. But you don't notice these little defects until you put everything back.
In the gasket or the cup?
In the gasket.
In the gasket, okay.
So, cranking the engine, getting that pressure going again, that oil pressure, the engine starts heating up. And then with this design, with the flat 4, it dumps, especially the driver's side, right onto a hot pipe. And it tends to make some wonderful smoke. And so I basically...
Hey, you know what? Smoke it if you got a hot pipe. I've always said that.
Yeah, smoke them if you got them.
Yeah,
so it collects in the heat shield for your exhaust. So all that oil is just dumping straight in there. So I had to do that job twice. It's good now, and I'm super lucky because the driver's side, you have to pull the windshield washer fluid reservoir, unplug all the alternator power cables, move a bunch of other stuff out of the way. And this is just to access a valve cover.
Just to redo what you just did.
I'm looking at a Miata right here off camera, and I can do the valve cover and spark plugs in that car in 15 minutes.
Yeah, you just like unhook the PCD and call it. Yep.
Super easy, but that's pretty crazy. I also had to install a new clutch slave cylinder.
Mr. Slave?
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah.
Mr. Hay. So that's a fun job. I did bleed it myself, and then I got a partner to help me out, but that's always a fun job. The accessibility kind of sucks on this car because it's not, you don't access underneath like every other car in the world. It's on top of the transmission, underneath the front, or the top mount intercooler.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, with turbo cars, you get to move the intercooler to install that.
Yeah. Which
is not as easy as you think because there's definitely a lot of piping, pain in the butt, but that's all good to go. This car is pretty much wrapped up at this point, and it's awesome. I've been driving it around. What a lovely
They're
car,
just good cars, man. Like it's kind of the ultimate one-car solution.
It's like the ultimate WRX. It's really a lifted wagon WRX.
I'm for it.
Nothing to hate, and a manual. So.
And it's unassuming.
Very unassuming, and I think the style has aged well. They look a little weird and old when they came out.
I remember when they first came out, I was like, that's a weird, like, boxy, like, wagon thing, and now
it looks awesome.
Yep.
Just the right size. The greenhouse is impressive when you're inside. Looking out, all you see is the world around you, so...
Good cars.
That's my PCP, baby.
Brilliant. Thanks for doing PCP with me, my friend.
Of course, I'm always there in your darkest
and most substance abusing hour, so I appreciate that.
Most dank.
And
sorry,
can it be PCP dank? Like, I don't know.
It can be pretty dank.
A PCP enthusiast, we would love you to share your knowledge of abusing Angel Dust with us and let us know if dank is the correct term or not until that moment in time, do you think there's like angel dust abuse like message boards?
They'd be so fun to read, wouldn't they?
I know. Exactly. We should we should make an account there. B, I want to thank everyone for listening along and continuing to put up with our nonsense, PCP, angel dust, or otherwise. So thanks for doing all that. Chadwick, where can you be tracked down?
You did the draw. Yeah, you can find me on the tubes at Auto Obsessive Garage, where I do my restorations and reviews. Also on Instagram from time to time. How about Frank? Where can the good people follow you?
Same platforms, different name. I am at the Photographer's Garage, taking photos and video of cars and such. We are at APA Podcast on the gram, and you are listening to
Pointless Automotive Podcast.
That's it. All right.
Thanks as always, guys.
Bye, guys.
Peace.